I'm Marinero, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. The MLS transfer window has come and gone. At least this one, of course. There's going to be another one that's going to open up in the summer for soccer around the world, but it closed last night at midnight. Some teams were shaking and baking, others were not. Unfortunately, the team close to home, the team in Montreal, CF Montreal, were unable to get anything done. Nothing was able to materialize. We'll find out if they had anything on the table. Mind you, some will argue that the moves that CF Montreal had to make, they already made them in the last 2 weeks. We'll discuss that with the premier insider in North America. He is North America's version of Fabrizio Romano. Tom Bogert will join me coming up. And after Tom, we're going to talk a little bit about CF Montreal and how they lined up at practice today with Tristan D'Amour from Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. Tom and Tristan coming up on the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And here we are. Every podcast, no matter which sport you talk about, is always a privilege and it's a pleasure. But some, they carry a little bit more weight than others. Today is one of those days because Tom Bogert really is North America's version of Fabrizio Romano. He is the premier insider as far as the MLS is concerned, and he's my guest today. Tom, good afternoon. Thanks for taking the time.
Tony, thank you so much for that kind intro. Appreciate you having me on.
You're very welcome. I've been following you for a while, and you have climbed the ranks over the last couple of years to establish yourself as now unanimously the number one insider, MLS insider in the world. And I know you're pretty humble about it, but that's a fact. And as a matter of fact, The Athletic was able to recognize your talent as well. And yesterday they made it official, and you made it official, that you were joining The Athletic on a full-time basis to cover the MLS for them.
Yeah, first of all, I'd say 10 out of 10 do not recommend trying to start a new job on the transfer window deadline day. If that's exactly what you do for your work, I'll tell you the onboarding emails and presentations, the trying to figure out a new work laptop and try to figure out, oh, what is this back? I need to log into this. I need to check out that. All the while doing all the reporting stuff. Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend that if you can avoid it. I'd suggest that, but it was certainly not a boring day to put it lightly.
I don't know how you did with your laptop and your emails and your passwords and checking in and checking out. I do know that as far as your reporting was concerned, you absolutely hit it out of the park. I mean, I knew you were connected, but to this degree, I mean, scoop after scoop after scoop after scoop. It's unbelievable. So congratulations on another fine day's work yesterday and your first day with The Athletic after being a contributor for the MLS for quite some time. And also you're a collaborator on the Extra Time podcast. And if all goes well, I don't want to put you in the spot here, but I'd love to have you as a part-time collaborator on the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. So for the benefit of most of the audience who are true diehard CF Montreal fans, and I know they weren't able to pull anything off, a couple of days ago, they loaned out Rita Zuir to San Antonio of the USL. That opened up a roster spot. The team made it official today. They also announced that he would be signing a 1-year contract extension for next year and a club option the year after that. But, you know, him leaving gave us all the impression that someone was going to be arriving, and nobody did. That doesn't mean they didn't try. It leads me to believe that they probably had something on the table that didn't materialize. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so that's what I heard, is that obviously they wanted to get Rita more regular minutes. He was playing a decent amount, but he wasn't starting. So the idea was to get him more regular starts at San Antonio. He should play just about every game, give or take, and obviously pending injury. But the other side of that, I was told that one of the reasons they wanted to do this was to open a roster spot. I haven't heard anything. I don't know exactly what's going on. I do, to cover our bases here, just because deals haven't been announced doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't happen. I'm not saying that it's likely or anything, but MLS clubs are a little bit more weird than elsewhere in the world, where everything would have been announced by now if this was a transfer window in Europe, if it was happening or not happening. MLS clubs don't have to. The deadline only applies to the paperwork being filed. And some teams like to announce, they like to wait until a visa comes in to announce. They like to wait until the medical's all done to announce, but the deal would have already went through. There's been 4 or 5, I think, different announcements already today as we're recording, and the transfer window closed last night. So again, I don't want to raise hopes for CF Montreal fans, but I guess I cannot say with 100% certainty that nothing is coming.
I can understand that and I can appreciate that, but I've been following your work very closely, and I know that if paperwork was put in with the MLS head office, Tom Bogert would find out about it in a hurry. All right. Okay. But we'll leave that window of opportunity open. That's for sure. Tom, as someone who covers the MLS based out of the United States, the way you are, CF Montreal, the city of Montreal from a distance, what's the word around the league? I mean, what's the vibe around the team? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Right now, it's not super positive. I'd say last year it was extremely positive. That they were one of the national stories across the league. They were Wilfred Nance's team. They didn't have many expectations. Georgi Mihailovic breaking through. Obviously, Ismail Kone. Everything else. They played some of the most beautiful football in the league, if not the most. They were up there with LAFC. Montreal were one of the teams I would go out of my way to make sure if there's 4 other games on, Montreal's getting the top TV, because the way that Nance had that team playing and the way that the players were performing was very high. I didn't answer your exact question to go with the praise, because right now the vibes are extremely low. Hernan Losada at DC United, he got some results. They didn't make the playoffs. It was short term. There were problems off the field. He was successful, for a decent stretches in terms of results. Aesthetically, I don't love it. It's, another version of like the Red Bull car crash soccer. And he's brought that here. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be aesthetic to please me or any other idiots watching the team. If they get results, that's all that matters. But when they're not getting results, it is particularly difficult around the club. Yeah. And then the other side of this is they lost a lot of really good players. They were able to bring back Victor Wanyama, which it didn't look like they were going to do. Maybe Victor was doing a little negotiating in public. They got that deal done. That was very good. Aaron Herrera, I thought that was a very good deal. Until Bryce Duke came, and even with Bryce Duke, they lost a whole lot of attacking talent and did not bring in adequate replacements. So I'm with the road heavy start to the season. I'm not shocked that they've performed poorly. I'm not shocked that they were shut out in 6 of their first 8 games or whatever the exact number is now. I really like Bryce Duke. I'm not sure if he's a perfect fit to this play style, but he's going to help this attack. Again, it's a long-winded way to saying the vibes are pretty low about this team right now, and they're back to, okay, they need to string together a couple wins, a couple good performances for people, not to care, but, okay, you're going to go down the pecking order in things that we're looking at.
Couple of tidbits on some of the things that you brought up. I want to get back to Rida Zouhir, and you talked about getting him playing time in San Antonio. There's no doubt they want to do that. It also, we have to keep in mind that at the 6th position, which he was playing, and he can play also as an 8, so he can play 6 or 8. You have on this team Wanyama and Piet, who are 6s. You have on this team Saliba and Iliadis and Chouanier, who can play 6/8. Mind you, Chouanier can also play wing back. He can also play 10. He can play various positions. He is a jack of all trades on this team. One of the reasons why I think that Rida Zouhir was loaned out, because it's my understanding they actually approached them in the wintertime before they even stepped foot on the pitch and before they even had 1 minute of camp. He was approached with this proposal, and he said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Correct. Maybe there was some negotiating going on with his agent once that happened, because he was able to get himself an extension. But one of the reasons I think that conversation took place is that CF Montreal sporting director Olivier Renard is a big fan of Nathan Saliba. According to some, he believes that Saliba can be the next one to be sold. And I'm not saying he will be the next one, but I mean, when I mean the next one, maybe not entirely Ismail Kone type of success and type of money, but he believes that the ceiling is high and that he has the potential to be sold. If Rita was here, it's one more player who takes away from playing time also from Nathan Saliba. Now it's easier for him to get in the lineup. On to Losada, if I can, very quickly. You talked about you're not crazy about the style of football. You're not the only one, because former Canadian men's national team player Julian de Guzman on TSN television a couple of weeks ago basically called it anti-football. And so, mind you, if they can win, I think fans will, they'll be able to swallow the fact that they're not overly entertaining. But in an ideal world, Tom, you know as well as I do, you'd love to have great players that generate a buzz in the city and with the fan base. You'd love to have attractive offensive football and the results that go with it. Right now, what they have is they're coming off a couple of wins. One win versus the Red Bulls and their last win versus Vaughan Azzurri in the Canadian Championship. So they have 2 straight wins to show for it, one in the MLS, and they're going to Sporting Kansas City on Saturday. All right, okay. So out of the moves that were done, talk to us about the ones that most caught your attention.
From the whole transfer window or just kind of recently?
From the transfer window, yeah.
So, again, and this obviously dates back to the start of the offseason. So there are a lot of transfers that were impactful. There were a lot of big numbers. There are a lot of big talents. For me, I don't even know if this technically counts because it was a player returning on loan. But James Sands to New York City FC, coming back to New York City FC, I think stands out to me as perhaps my favorite move of the window. A lot of the expectation was that if Rangers didn't pick up his purchase option, he was just going to stay in Europe somewhere else. There were offers from other clubs in Europe. There were proposals from other clubs in Europe, including from Standard Liège, where James Sands, his former head coach Ronny Deila, is. But NYCFC came to him and his agent and said, look, we think you had that European experience. You're going to go back to Europe at some point. This is why we think the next few years of your development is best set here. We're going to play you as a number 6. We know that's what you want. We think that's where you're going to maximize your potential and be the best version of yourself you can for your career. And he said, yeah, let's do it. And obviously there's a monetary value. They gave him a new contract. They gave him a pay raise, as they should have because of what he earned based on his stature and his play. And he's come back. And the way that he makes the game so much easier for the center backs behind him, and the way that it frees Keaton Parks to get more forward, the way that it frees Nick Cushing to be able to play Santi Rodriguez and Richie Ledesma on the field at the same time. They can play extremely attacking because James Sands is a one-man defensive transition wrecking ball. He's a one-man anchor in that central midfield that gives the freedom to a lot of players around him to take more chances, and they get to become more aggressive and more attacking just because of all the space, just because of the intellect and the intelligence that James Sands has at the base of the midfield.
Speaking of New York City FC, I know you saw this earlier today. Valentin Tati Castellanos, who's on loan from New York City FC to Girona, they played versus Real Madrid. Did you catch the final score?
Yeah, 4-2, and Tati Castellanos dropped a 4-piece on Real Madrid's dome. He's one of my favorite.
When was the last time you saw somebody score 4 goals versus Real Madrid? I don't think I've ever seen this before in my life.
So the stat is the last time this happened in a La Liga game, it was 1947. 1947!
Wow.
Our boy, MLS fans, you take these players when they go, our boy, Tati Castellanos, I don't understand why Leeds United or another Premier League team did not pay $15 million to sign him in the winter. Sorry. That's what NYCFC were asking for, and they didn't get their asking price, so they just loaned him to a City Football Group club in Girona. I think he's incredible. I think he could fit into a lot of different places, and I'm really, really happy that he did it on a big platform today. It's a Tuesday midweek game. Everybody's locked in, and Tati Castellanos drops 4.
This is unbelievable, really. A big day for the LA Galaxy as well.
Today?
Yeah, well, there haven't been many over the last little while, but acquiring U.S. Youth International defender Mauricio Cuevas, of course, from Club Brugge.
Yeah, the ironic part of this is that he was in the LA Galaxy Academy. He played for the LA Galaxy second team and steered by his agent to go sign in Europe, and it didn't quite work out at Club Brugge. So the Galaxy are getting back a local kid. They're getting back, a talented player. He's been with the U20s. He was on the CONCACAF U20 winning team. We'll see if he makes the roster for the U20 World Cup. I'm sure that he's somewhere around the bubble. It's not a definite that he will make it, but he's in kind of that contention. It's a little disappointing. The Galaxy were looking to make a big attacking swing. A deal never got over the line. And this summer they have transfer sanctions where they can't sign players from abroad. So again, it's very big that they got their first win of the season over the weekend. That should help with pressure a little bit. But I think a lot of people, myself included, were expecting a bit more for them as the window winded down.
Toronto FC had a lot of people scratching their head earlier this morning when it was announced that they acquired, actually, you're the one who announced it. Thank you very much. You announced everything. That they acquired forward CJ Sapong from Nashville in exchange for defender Lucas McNaughton and $125,000 of GAM and $75,000 of GAM add-ons. This is weird because Sapong is 34 years old. He's played with several teams. His production has it's not what he used to be, but he can still score. There's no doubt about it. McNaughton is 6 years younger and a promising center back within the Canadian national program. Having said that, moments later, Toronto announced that they acquired a center back, so now it kind of all made sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that they were looking for another option up top, but for me, I don't really know how much of a difference CJ Sapong is to Adama Diomande or Ayo Akinola. I guess this is injury concerns, and CJ, while he is 34, he's held up physically really, really well over his career, particularly the last few years. He's played in all but 3 of Nashville's games over the last 2 seasons and 8 games or whatever this year. So, look, I think he's a solid rotation player. He's a solid depth player, solid for competition. He hasn't scored in like 6 or 8 months. Nashville, they were starting Teal Bunbury over him. Not exactly a huge DP forward. I'm not sure what you're getting from him at this stage and what the difference is between Diomande and Ayo Akinola. Again, maybe it comes down to they don't like either Dio or Ayo's injury history. The needle for me,
Yeah, and later on in the day, they acquire Mabika from Inter Miami, who's played in all their games. So that's how they tried to maneuver it. Maybe they're thinking that they were either going to move Ayo Akinola now or they're going to move him in the summer, and that's why they had to bring in a forward. We know it's been much talked about that Ayo's got aspirations to go play in Europe or overseas somewhere, but that didn't materialize either. Okay, I'll leave you with this because I know you're very, very busy. You talked about Bryce Duke before, and you said you're a fan of his. You're not quite certain it's going to work out in this system under Enan Losada. My question to you is, and you're the one who broke the trade again, all right? I should say when you're the one who doesn't break trades because you break them all. But when that deal went through initially, it had a lot of people wondering about the GAM money because Montreal sent Kamal Miller and $1.3 million in GAM for Duke and Lassiter, 2 players who were acquired by their teams a year ago. Their teams who went out and paid $100,000 in GAM money per player. Your initial thoughts when you were told of the deal?
Confused. And I'll tell you, I've never gotten more text from sources to say, hey, man, did you make a typo on your tweet? Did you mean to say that Montreal are getting money or what? Like, where did that money come from? Miami can't be getting it. I was like, no, man, I was assured by numerous sources Miami are also getting Kamal Miller and the money. A lot of people said they thought a fair trade or a trade that they wouldn't have asked questions about would have been Kamal for Bryce Duke and Ari Lassiter straight up. Maybe that's probably too far. Like I don't understand why it ended up being $1.3 million in addition to those 2 players because in addition to Miller, Bryce Duke and not to be too dismissive of Ari Lassiter, but he was traded for $100,000 a year ago. He hasn't been a regular starter with Miami. He's a good rotation. Again, like he's a useful player. But kind of casting him aside, take away $100,000 or $2,000 in the valuation. They're valuing Bryce Duke at $1.3 million plus Kamal Miller. That's roughly $2.3 million in allocation money. That's a new league record trade. That feels a little. And again, I'm a really, really big fan of Bryce Duke. Again, I don't think that this is the perfect system for him, but I think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to help this team. All these things. I still think that's pretty excessive in terms of valuation, and I'm not sure how it got there. And because I'm also a big Kamal Miller fan, I know that he hasn't played great at the beginning of the season, but he was hoping for a new contract that didn't come, all of this stuff, and he ends up getting traded. So, look, I'm definitely confused at the price, but again, look, like if you overpay and you get the right guy, if Bryce Duke turns into Georgi Mihailovic 2.0, which is a high bar, but if that happens, we won't be talking about the trade fee to get him.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're probably looking at you know what, we keep Bryce Duke for a couple of years, help him, make him play, develop, and then you sell him, you get a couple of $1 million, and maybe even hoping that Kamal Miller can play very good soccer with Inter Miami. They sell him. Next thing you know, if they sell him for $2.5 to $3 million, they end up getting probably 28% out of that deal on a resale, and they probably think they're going to end up getting their money back. Anyway, you know what? I think it's a deal that both teams had to make because there needed to be an electroshock within those organizations. We know why Inter Miami did it. Supposedly they're clearing the way in their quest to try and get some big guns. And I know I said the last one was the last one, but this one really will be. The chances of Lionel Messi signing with Inter Miami, because he's been seen dining it up in Barcelona, going out with his former teammates. What are the chances he signs with Inter Miami? Because right now, what we're hearing, it's either Inter Miami, it's either Barcelona, it's either a team in Saudi Arabia. Is there anybody else? Is there still the prospect of PSG on the table? What are the chances of Inter Miami and Lionel Messi?
I'll say that 4 or 5 months ago, everybody I talked to was very confident that it was when, not if, and they were pretty hopeful for this summer. I haven't heard a whole lot recently, and this is I try to be careful on this subject because, as far as I know, Lionel Messi hasn't decided. So what the hell can I say until he makes a decision? Or what, like, it'd be reckless if I said, oh, it's 80% chance that he signs at Miami or 50% chance or whatever it is, because we don't know. And that's a line that I got from somebody connected to the club. It's like, Leo's going to decide when he decides. Like, we don't know for sure. So, again, I'm really hopeful, just putting, as a fan, just as somebody who's obviously day in and day out, again, you yourself, it's good for us in a professional sense if he comes. It's good for us in a fan sense if he comes. Look, so just blatantly, I'm rooting really hard for it, and I hope that it does happen this summer. But I do think that he will play for Inter Miami before he retires. Hopefully in a couple months rather than, a year and a half or whatever it is. But again, we'll see.
I'm hoping it's this year because the entrepreneur in me bought 4 tickets to the game between the New York Red Bulls. Listen to this, Tom. 2 months ago, I bought tickets to the Red Bulls and Inter Miami on Saturday, August. I think it's 26th or 20. It's the 26th, I believe, or 28th, whatever. 26th, I believe. Fourth row, center half. I bought 4 tickets for $375 US. And I said,
that's going to be worth so much more money if he comes.
And I said, if Messi's going, I'm either going to watch the game or I'm selling the tickets. That's a true story. On your busiest day, you made time for me. I'm honored. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, there you have it, Tom Bogert of The Athletic. Wow. We bring in another friend of the show. I'm hoping that Tom is going to be a friend of the show, but joining me right now to talk about CF Montreal, Tristan D'Amour of Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. What's going on?
I'm well. How are you, Tony?
Extremely well. Tom was just saying that even though the deadline was last night at midnight, you're seeing trades filter through. The league, the MLS, does things a little bit differently than Europe would, because Europe, you would find out right away. He says there's still that window of opportunity. There's still an opening that, teams sometimes wait for a visa to come in. Sometimes they wait a little while to announce it. But as of 5 minutes ago, his phone didn't ring. He didn't get any text messages. He got nothing tipping him off that CF Montreal made a deal. So let's go under the assumption that they did not. Are you surprised?
Well, given the fact that Rida Zouhir was on his way to San Antonio, I thought that something was on the line. That said, I mean, look, I was surprised to see the Bryce Duke trade to begin with. I wasn't expecting anything because they kind of led us to believe that there's nothing to be expected, and this is what we're going to see for most of the season. And it's going to be, not unlike Wilfried Nancy's first season, where they lived and died by the way they played. Unfortunately, for people that liked the way that Wilfried Nancy played, it seems like they're going to live and die playing the way that Hernan Losada plays until someone gets tired of it and pulls the trigger.
Yeah, well, it's not overly attractive football, but in the last 2 games, one of which was in the Canadian Championship and one of which was in the season, it was able to produce a victory. Here's hoping that they're going to be able to pull off a win in Sporting Kansas City. They're not playing versus Man City on Saturday, and I'll tell you that. Sporting Kansas City has 3 points on the season. They are just by far the worst team in Major League Soccer. All right, why don't we do this? Sammy and Yellow at Master Control, bring up what looked to be the starting 11 today at practice. Keep in mind, folks, it's Tuesday, and they play on Saturday, so this can change. James Pantemis was back at practice, practicing with the goalkeepers. Miljevic, Quizera, and Saliba were back at practice, practicing with the regulars as well. Vilsaint, Kyoto, and Piet were doing solo work, and Lapalainen was absent. Now, let's take a look. Pantemis back in goal, a 3-man back line. of Camacho with Corbo to his right and Waterman to his left. At left wing back, Ari Lassiter. At right wing back, Aaron Herrera. In front of the back line, Chouanier and Wanyama, with Rhea and Duke in behind Chinoso Ofer. Now, the one thing that really stands out here out of this lineup, Tristan, is A, Pantemis assuming the starting position right away. It can change on Saturday. And B, Ari Lassiter deployed as a left wing back, which is not his ideal position. We heard when they acquired him that the position he prefers the most is that of a second forward. And if it's not going to be a second forward, it'll be a winger, ideally on the left. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is that it's pretty much what we look about the Ari Lassiter thing. I think that's one of the most important things. I think goalkeeper is definitely the most important thing. But just to touch on Ari Lassiter for a second, he is someone that could help fill a need, right? He is someone, I mean, I think it's obvious. Anyone that's followed this team knows that they're short on the left side of the pitch. So if you have an opportunity where it's not as bad, because look, Lasse Lapalainen was the exact same thing you said, except for maybe the fact that he probably prefers to be a left winger than a second forward. But I still think you could play him as a second forward. I think it's kind of there's a lot of similarities. So if there's an opportunity for you to start,
but Lapalainen's a natural righty, however.
Yeah, of course, but he's that's where he played in Finland. So at the end of the day, I think there's still some similarities, except that, as you said, he is a left-footed naturally, Ariel Lassiter. So if we can at least see what he can give in a one proper good start against. I know you said that they were bad, and I understand that they are bad, and they are bad, but historically, Sporting Kansas City has been giving tough games to CF Montreal ever since they joined MLS. So I am not.
Well, that's the team that came into Montreal last year and beat CF Montreal in Montreal.
Absolutely.
That
the very famous game.
The very famous game that after which Wilfred Nancy said, you know what? I have my values and I have my principles and I'm out of here. And the players basically begged them to stay. And they said, you took us this far. We're not going to abandon you. You can't abandon us. And you'd have to think that Olivier Renard and Gabriel Gervais probably said, stay, please, pretty please. And he said, I'm staying for the players.
And another important thing as well?
You're not going to exercise my option. Yes, go ahead.
They weren't good last year either. They weren't good.
Yeah,
they were not good. So look, this is not going to be an easy thing. And hopefully this is a statement. If they do win, hopefully this is a statement game where they have a 3-game winning streak in all competitions and back-to-back wins in league play. That would be very important. So Lassiter, I would like to see him play on the left for a full game, not a 15 minutes and we switch it around type deal. I want to see him on the left. This would be important. I would like to see what he could bring. We know what Bryce Duke can bring. Now let's see what Lassiter can give you. James Pantemis.
A couple of weeks ago in that game versus DC United, there were 5 changes at the wing back position.
Yeah, this is scrambling. And look,
Chouanier playing left wing back twice, and then at one point moving over to right wing back. It was crazy.
Literally, Hernan Losada said that they tried everything, which still, to me, I said it on Twitter. I'm going to say it to you right now. Not reassuring to me. I know you're going through hard times, but you can't look at someone straight in the eyes and say, we tried everything. If you tried everything, you should leave.
I understand your point. Well, he's not leaving because they have been able to win their last couple of games. But I will say this. I think there's such a thing as overcoaching. And I think that night versus DC United, Losada lost the game because I think he made way too many changes and his team wasn't able to get into a flow. They weren't comfortable. And so I think it backfired. Pantemis, I want to ask you about him because many believe that Jonathan Sirois may have stolen the job based on the starting 11 at practice earlier today. Losada doesn't think so. And it looks like James Pantemis has been given the benefit of the doubt and goes back as the number 1 keeper on a long leash or a short leash.
Well, probably sure, but that's the thing, right? So even Nancy was very very insistent on his number one and his number two. So maybe that's what it is. I honestly, so this is all credit to Jonathan Sirois, is the fact that for like 2 days, people were like, should we get another goalie just in case? And 2 games in, it was like nothing happened. And he was commanding of his net. And again, this is, I think you have to give credit to the CPL. You really have to. The guys coming in, and this is what Pantemis lacked for his first stint as the number one. He came in, hadn't really had an opportunity. And like, obviously the pandemic season, how the CPL had their season essentially meant that he played like 4 games for a regular season and didn't advance to the knockout rounds, what they called the island games back in the day.
Yeah.
But Sirois managed to have one stellar season where he was goalkeeper of the year, and then actually had like his actual position as a starter challenged and lost his position for a little while, came back. Like, he dealt with adversity at the CPL level. And I understand that it's not the same as the MLS level. I think we all agree, but it's still professional goalkeeping for 2 seasons where he's had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I think that really helped him in a start of the season that we all agree is horrible. It's not a good season at all, but he managed to be a bright spot, which is hard. I mean, you're playing for a team that doesn't score, that has one of the worst goal differentials. And we're talking about him, Tony, as someone that could potentially challenge for the number one when the starter's coming back. I think out of itself deserves mention.
Yeah, no, and the team that he played for in the CPL wasn't exactly a league powerhouse either. So he faced a lot of shots, and he had to stand on his head. Listen, he was the keeper of the year, and I had a chance to speak with him a couple of months ago in a scrum. And what's the thing you take out of the CPL the most? What did you learn the most? And he said managing men. And that's right, because he played in a men's league. He played in a professional men's soccer league, and he was able to manage men. And he talked like a leader. He's looked like a leader, and he's goaled like a leader. And, you know, a year ago, we had a little bit of a goalie controversy with CF Montreal. Who's the number one guy? It looked like it was Pantemis to start. Then midway through, it looked like it was Breza. And then down the stretch into the playoffs, it was Pantemis again. This year, they start. It's Pantemis the guy. He gets hurt game 1. Sirois is able to establish himself, so what he can do. Pantemis is back now, and we're going to see whether they're going to go with Pantemis as the number one between now and the end of the year. Should he drop the ball at any point? Or they're going to, have a rotation. So look, we're going to keep our eyes on that. Tristan, very much appreciate you taking the time today, and continue the good work with Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, there you have it. I'm Marinaro. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch all of our episodes on the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. It's absolutely free. Tell your friends about it. Share it on social media. Create a buzz about it. This podcast really is sick. And some will say, so is the host. You can also follow us on Twitter at SickPod, CFMTL. Have a good one.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.